My husband has always been close to his mom. So close, in fact, that most people would call him a mama's boy. I never thought that this connection could get in the way of our relationship until everything changed that night. I can still remember the anger on her face, and it all started because she decided to go through my purse. Without asking. Going through my purse was a huge invasion of privacy. Who does that? She found some money in there, and before I could even explain, she started accusing me of stealing. She had no idea I was working. She thought I was just a stay-at-home wife who didn't contribute anything financially. In reality, I had found a job, the only thing I could manage, considering my situation, and was earning my own money for the first time. But she refused to listen. She and my husband tried to kick me out of our own home, claiming I had stolen from them. I didn't argue. I just grabbed my things, and without a word, I walked out and went across the street to a hotel. When I walked into the hotel, the manager greeted me warmly. It was the same hotel where I had recently started working. Seeing the shock on my mother-in-law's face as she watched me walk confidently into my workplace was a moment I'll never forget. But now, as I sit here writing this, I still feel lost. I never thought my life would come to this point, where I'd be seeking advice from strangers on the internet, but here I am. I know I've made mistakes, and I've missed so many red flags along the way. I should have seen this coming, but I didn't, and now I have to figure out what my next steps are. I'm writing this because I feel trapped. I'm 30 years old, and I'm starting to think my husband is cheating on me. I rely completely on him and his parents, which makes leaving feel impossible. I want to break this down into sections, so it's easier to understand and not just one long, confusing rant. First, why I think my husband is cheating. I'm not someone who jumps to conclusions easily. I try to stay calm, to be rational. My husband, Randy, has never been good at communicating. He holds everything in, which has always made it hard for me to understand what he's thinking. Lately, though, there's been something off about him. He's been going out more often, coming home late, always giving the same excuse. I'm working late. He's a real estate agent, so his schedule has always been unpredictable, but lately, it's been different. Then there's his phone. He's constantly on it now, far more than he used to be. He says it's work-related, but he already has a work phone. The extra time he spends on his personal phone just doesn't make sense. A few weeks ago, I even saw him using Snapchat, an app I had no idea he even used. I can't imagine a work reason for him to be on Snapchat. Sometimes he comes home smelling like perfume, and other times, he looks more put together than someone who's been working late should. I haven't confronted him about any of this. You might wonder why. The truth is, I've tried talking to him about issues before, and it never ends well. He always turns it around on me, makes it seem like I'm overreacting, like I'm the problem. I know that if I bring this up, he'll make me feel guilty for even asking. And honestly, I'm scared of his reaction. I've been through this before with him, and I know how it'll end, with me apologizing, feeling like I'm the one who's done something wrong. I got married when I was 20, just out of high school. Randy was 25 and in the Navy. He swept me off my feet at a time when I had no one. My dad left when I was a freshman, and my mom gave up after that. She passed away when I was 20, leaving me completely alone. When Randy came into my life, I thought I had found my savior. We got married within 5 months of meeting, and he promised me stability. He promised me a family. I wanted that so badly, I would have followed him anywhere. Instead, he moved me in with his parents, and then he left for deployment. His parents, they were traditional, to put it lightly. His father had been in the Navy too, and they believed in strict roles. The man works and the woman takes care of the home. When Randy left, his mom took it upon herself to teach me how to be the perfect wife. I was 20, desperate to belong, so I did everything they asked. I cooked, cleaned, took care of the house, and over time, I stopped questioning anything. I even stopped leaving the house alone. When Randy came back and started working as a real estate agent, nothing changed for me. I stayed at home, taking care of his parents, living up to their expectations without ever questioning them. I lost myself in that house. My world became about Randy and his family. I stopped seeing friends, stopped going out. I had no life outside of that house. I wasn't allowed to have opinions that didn't match theirs. I dressed the way they wanted, acted the way they expected, and I thought that was enough. I convinced myself that I was lucky to have a family, even if it wasn't the one I'd dreamed of. It took me a long time to realize that the way they treated me wasn't love, it was control. And it wasn't until I started suspecting Randy was cheating that I began to see it for what it was. I've known, deep down for a long time, that this wasn't right. But I ignored it because I was scared. They were the only family I had. The hardest part is knowing that even if I wanted to leave, I couldn't. I don't have an education, a job, or any experience. I'm 30, with nothing to my name, no savings, and nowhere to go. After they kicked me out that night, I walked into the hotel, and the manager, Abigail, welcomed me. She had given me a job as a housekeeper, despite my lack of experience. She'd sensed that I needed a chance, and she gave it to me. That job had been my first step toward freedom. For weeks, I'd been working in secret, dropping my mother-in-law off at her social club, then parking the car and walking to the hotel. I worked a few hours a day, then made sure I was home before anyone noticed I was gone. It wasn't much, but it was mine. My first paycheck had been a symbol of hope, a sign that maybe, just maybe, I could find a way out of this life. But that night, when my mother-in-law found the money, all of that crumbled. She accused me of stealing, and Randy believed her. He pulled the car over, opened the door, and told me to get out. When I hesitated, he dragged me out, took my purse, and drove away. I was left standing there in shock until I turned around and saw the hotel behind me. I walked inside, and Abigail was there. She took one look at me and knew something was wrong. She didn't ask questions. She just hugged me and took me to the back room. I ended up telling her everything. I hadn't planned to, but in that moment, I needed someone to hear me. She listened, and when I was done, she didn't judge me. She didn't tell me I was stupid for staying or for putting up with everything. She just said she was sorry I had to go through it. That simple act of kindness meant more to me than anything else. She gave me a place to stay that night, and the next morning, she brought me my payslips and documents proving I worked at the hotel. She told me that no one had the right to take away my dignity, that I had earned that money, and I deserved to stand up for myself. With her support, I found the strength to go back to the house. I showed Randy the documents, thinking it would change something, that he'd see I hadn't lied. But he didn't care. He said it didn't matter, that I had gone behind his back, and that was enough for him to consider it a betrayal. His mother agreed, saying I'd broken their trust. And that was the moment I realized that nothing I did would ever be enough for them. If I stayed, I'd spend the rest of my life apologizing, trying to prove myself, and it still wouldn't matter. So I left. I grabbed my important documents, a few clothes, and I walked out. Abigail was waiting for me outside, and I knew then that I wasn't going back. I've been staying at Abigail's apartment since then. It's scary, not knowing what's going to happen next. I don't have everything figured out, but I know this. I can't keep living the way I was. For 10 years, I did everything they asked of me. I was the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, and it still wasn't enough. When they threw me out, they lost the right to control me. And when they showed up at the hotel, demanding Abigail fire me, trying to use my father-in-law's name to intimidate her, I knew I had to stand up for myself. I took the CCTV footage from the night Randy threw me out, along with photos of the bruises on my arm where he'd grabbed me, and I went to the police. I made a report, even though I knew they might not be able to do anything. I just wanted it on record. I also sent everything to the local newspaper, the same one that had recently written a glowing article about my father-in-law. Within days, multiple news outlets picked up the story, calling out Randy and his mother for their actions. My father-in-law's office released a statement condemning their behavior, and Randy was cut off, kicked out of the house, just like I had been. Now I'm trying to rebuild. I'm still working at the hotel, and Abigail has been helping me figure out my next steps. I've applied for a management training program, and I'm hopeful that I'll be accepted. It's a small step, but it's mine. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm building something for myself. I'm also in the process of getting a divorce. The women's shelter I reached out to connected me with a lawyer, and if all goes well, Randy will have to cover the costs. I don't know what the future holds, and that's terrifying. But I know one thing for sure. It has to be better than what I'm leaving behind. Last night, I read a quote that said, "To build your new life, sometimes you have to burn your old one." To the ground. It's not easy, and it's painful, but it's what I need to do to finally be free.